mean, the reason I wanted to put on that session was for that you showed that you can do sort of... You'd probably say that transition was a high-end topic with older age groups, but I think you can do it with younger players. You could even do that with 8s, 9s and 10s, but with different detail. I think the little bits of detail that turn it into transition is like when the defenders win the ball, I see a lot of practices, and used to do a lot myself, where you'd win it and then the practice would stop and then the team would start with the ball again rather than going and scoring a goal. There was always something to do with the defenders when they won the ball, and I think that was probably a key part in any transition session or in any session really that I try and do now, that always when you win the ball you do something with it. Because then you had the kids who didn't, at first they were like, oh, I don't really want to be a defender, but then there was no problem going in the middle as a defender because you got to do what? You got to score in the goal. So I think that would be one of the key points that hopefully come across in that part.
Yeah. Any questions regarding the session?
Yeah.
Yeah, just seem quite good on YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah.
Only 3 minutes at a time, or yet?
Now, one thing I do like seeing you live is sort of let me down is how you project the session and what you want from the voice, how you break it down. To sort of like carry that in every session, is that kind of like, I don't know if it's a key aspect from the coach, but I find that how you project.
Yeah. Do you mean like a sort of like a logical order, or?
Yeah, a logical order.
Yeah, I think you try. Yeah, I think that, and that really might not. It's hard on a showcase session to get that all out in an hour. I think that could be like a 6-week block of work there that slowly progresses as you go. We might just do the first bit of making the pitch big when we're playing, and then making it smaller week 2, and then week 3 you work on more in the transition, that sort of thing. So you always try and do a logical order, if I'm honest. It's not easy because you just want to coach everything that goes in. There's a lot happening in the session, but trying to focus on the bits at that given time is probably the hardest thing. But yeah, I try and make that a focus. Try and think about the problems that might come up in the session and what questions and challenges you can have around them. So yeah, I do try and do that. Yeah, it doesn't always work though, that's for sure. But thank you.
Regarding your pitch setup,
Yeah.
how did you find that?
Yeah, it was pretty tight. If I'm honest, I thought I was only going to have 12 players, and then suddenly like about 15 popped up. But that's how you work anyway. It happens in academies and wherever we work. So it was probably, the possession was a little bit tight, but I still think the players, if they're going to play at the highest level, they need to be able to play in those tight spaces. And the tighter it was meant that there were more changeovers, so there was more to coach and work on, to be fair. So yeah, a little bit of mayhem in the first practice with the 2 boxes, which I think is good. You ended up having one game joining the other and playing through, which if you just looked at it would look a bit crazy, but I think you'd see that most of the players understood what was going on.
And regarding the small-sided game, the mic kept cutting out.
Okay.
What you wanted from the players?
Yeah, I mean, really, just to almost just try and put all those things into a game. Didn't want to put too much on that game if I want. I think a thirds game sometimes good just to spread them out on the pitch, really. I probably would have done that pitch a lot wider if I knew I had that amount of players. But really just to let them play. I'd probably let them play a lot more at the end as well. I didn't realise on the time how far I'd gone over, to be fair. So I was just trying to let them try and work on that transition in the game at the end. Yeah.
This question is from the academic background. With your experience in coaching in Southampton, what adjustment you made to the early measuring footballers and the late developers, especially with Lara and his being late developer? I mean, in the youth development phase, 12, 16, what kind of adjustments you guys made?
Yeah, I think you have to be very patient with those players. We would always, at Southampton when I was there for lucky enough to be there for 5 years and saw a lot of good young players come through, very fortunate. And we would always take 2 or 3 in each age group that were very small and very technical players and physically might not have grown a lot. I wasn't really there when Lallana went through his part, but one I can remember is Oxlade Chamberlain. He was very small and technical, and when he was under 15, played down in the under 14s age group because he just couldn't affect the game. So we do a lot of that, play kids up, play kids down as well, because they want to get more touches on the ball. I've had to in the past explain that to the parents a lot, because the parents are like, what's going on? You're playing my kid down in age group, the kid finds it hard, but I think if it's the best thing for them, you've got to do it, and it does work sometimes. So sometimes playing them up and down, sometimes training them up an age group, even when they are small and technical, just so they get to learn to do the physical work. Because I think it's not just how big and strong you are now, it's whether you're mobile, you're agile, you can get your body in, you can handle the ball in 1v1. I know it's been probably a big theme today. So I think sometimes we don't want to protect those small ones too much because they've got to learn how to play against the big ones. But it's really each individual's different, I think. That's what I've found in the experiences I've had.
With regards, I don't know what the youngest ages you're looking at, but
No one wants to track back. But yeah, I think that sometimes selling it to the players as if, like when they're attackers, especially those front 3 or 4 positions, when they give the ball away, by them tracking back and getting back into their recovery position, it can turn into an attacking position for them. So for example, like even at this age, like a number 7, he needs to recover back in just in between the fullback and the opposite winger, just because then on the regain of possession he becomes an attacker. So I think that's one way of trying to sell that to the players. I think is good. So the attackers, you've got to get back in, so then it will help you when you attack. Does that make sense? It doesn't always work. It's hard to get across.
yeah, I do that. I understand
Yeah.
the break, so it's only 5 sides. So that's even more difficult because the forwards like scoring goals, and it's difficult to get a defender who can defend and say it's actually.
It's very hard. I think trying to sell it as in everyone attacks and everyone defends. We all defend as a team and we all have to attack as. But yeah, I think it's one of the hardest things to get those forward players to work hard. That's for sure.
And with regards to a defender at that kind of age, would you, because in my team I've got a lad who defends and he's very, very good at it and excels at that level, would you concentrate on him defending or would you push him forward maybe to midfield? Because then he's got the defence in mind to track back anyway, but then he's not so good going forward because he's used to defending.
Yeah, I think what I've seen is when you do have good defenders, you tend to just put them at the back and leave them at the back sometimes. Whereas sometimes you find some of the best defenders have played in midfield, because really when you're playing out, you've only got the game in front of you and you're just looking to play. Whereas when you're in midfield, the game's all around you, isn't it? So I think that definitely helps defenders playing out of position or more forward. And I think fullbacks as well, playing them in the middle, centre midfield, so they can switch play, work on both sides. I think they definitely become more rounded players. From what I've seen, especially at the younger ages, we used to always say that I've only just joined West Ham recently, so I'm not 100% sure of the younger age group policy. But with the younger ones at Southampton, it was that from 9s to 11s, you had to play 3 different positions, 2 in the same maybe unit, and then 1 else. So you'd have a centre back who play maybe centre back and right back, and then play up top. So you always try and rotate as much as you could. And then in between 12 and 16, you'd normally have 2 positions. And then after that, really nail down and drill into the detail of one. Yeah.
Your coaching brief at Southampton, is that different to now at West Ham?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, it's 2 totally different clubs. I found it really, really interesting. The kids at West Ham are very different. They're a lot raw, a lot more probably like natural, more potential physically. I mean, some of the kids there are unbelievable. So it's been quite exciting for me to work with those players who are very different. Maybe not as a lot of them haven't been as coached as much. Maybe who haven't been in the system or come in the system late. There's a lot that just comes sort of off the street, and at 13, 14, you just go, how are you even playing like this? It's unbelievable. So yeah, it's been a different challenge for me, definitely, with the learning styles and that sort of thing, but one I've really enjoyed. Before I went to Southampton, I was in London for about 6-7 years anyway, so I sort of knew the background of a lot of the kids, but yeah, it's been a challenge, but really enjoying one. Yeah, I've loved it. It's been great.
Any more questions, chaps?
Just one question. I've been coaching under 4 and 13. One of the difficult part is how to coach the upper body or the air control for them, because when they are hitting the puberty, for 13, their body is in a lot of imbalance.
Yeah.
So,
Do you mean the aerial control?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question actually, because I think sometimes we don't do enough work on like heading and those sorts of things in the younger age groups. I think different types of games are good for that. So like throw head catch with the younger ones, things like that, where they're moving and making decisions, because I still think heading is obviously a big part of the game. I think it's really just treating each individual how they are really. So I think that if one needs extra work, then you might need to give them some extra work on that aerial control. Others are quite good at it naturally anyway, so you can concentrate on other areas of their development. I think it's not necessarily like a whole group thing you might do, but just pick out 2 or 3 that you might need to work on, or just even like I'm a big fan of like a rival activity. So you always get your 2 or 3 kids who come early, don't you, and just show up, and that might be a little exercise for them that they can do. Then the next 2 come in and they're doing something else around their development, then another 2 come in and they're doing something different. So I think you can pinch little parts of the session before and after that might be able to help on those things. I find that quite helpful.